Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the feckin' world, my name is Geeky, and today is that day we check out some more Halo content. Except this time, we're going to be diving in to the depths of the Flood. We're going to be checking out some Halo Flood lore videos by Hidden Xperia. Now, I've mentioned Hidden Xperia in my previous lore video that I've done, but if you don't know who he is, then you need to get your head checked, because this man is the man to get to when it comes to Halo lore. So definitely go check out his channel, as he fully dedicates his channel to all things Halo, and he's an absolute legend in my book. But anyway, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be checking out two very special videos here today by Hidden Xperia that's going to go a little bit more in depth with the Flood lore, and I'm excited because my first encounters with the Flood in Halo Combat Evolved were terrifying, and I think you guys could reminisce from my reactions to seeing the Flood for the first time and the rapid change in ambience and atmosphere in the game from just a normal shooter to a downright horror game was one of the most terrifying but unique experiences I've ever had in a video game. But if you guys haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link up here for you guys to click, and you can enjoy that and see how I thought about the Flood for the very first time. Anyway, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's check out some more lore videos. Here we go. Alright, lads and ladies around the feckin' world, here is the list done by my dude, Mark's Top List. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff here that's hidden away because I am not quite ready yet to check it out. But as you can see, we have two very highlighted videos here that is ready to be checked out, and that has been unlocked due to my progress in the Halo franchise. We've got the Marine that almost defeated the Flood, and Captain Keyes and his terrifying Flood infection. So we're going to be checking out this one first and this one afterwards. Alright, so shout outs again to my boy Hidden Xperia. This guy's a freaking ledge bag. If you don't know what a ledge bag is, it's basically legend. Alright, here we go, lads. Hidden Xperia. This is it. The Marine that almost defeated the Flood. So who is the Marine that almost defeated the Flood? Like, that's a big statement. Defeating the Flood? We're gonna find out.
Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to take a short break from the Only videos to talk about a truly horrifying piece of Halo lore. The tale of an extraordinary Marine, a reclaimer who almost made it through one of the most hated places in the galaxy, with nothing more than his 8-gauge shotgun and his badass leatherneck resilience. Be sure to stick around till the end of the video, where I'm going to be announcing the winner of the iconic throne giveaway, and without any further ado, this is the untold legend of Staff Sergeant Marvin Mabuto.
Who?
We all know the horrors of the library, unless of course you're like me, a sadistic fucker who actually enjoys it, but realistically it's an
You enjoyed it, bro!
Vast,
what's wrong with you?
Repetitive facility used for storing ancient knowledge, except instead of storing books and ancient tombs, it stores the Flood. As we well know, Chief's time there was not exactly fun, to say the least.
No.
Chief, or the player,
was really not fun at all.
Alpha Halo by the Covenant. 243 Guilty Spark teleported Chief to the library in a hurry to fetch the index, which he was then going to use to defeat the parasite. But what if I told you that Chief almost wasn't taken to the library? What if I told you that one brave Marine was taken there before Chief? As Chief worked his way through the library, being constantly annoyed by the onslaught of Flood from all directions, and also from Guilty Spark repeatedly self-proclaiming himself as a genius, he left a trail of bodies in his wake. The facility was nothing more than metal, empty shells, and infected corpses. However, as Chief proceeded deeper into the library, he came across a corpse that stood out from the rest. A human corpse, an uninfected human corpse. Granted, it was defiled far past the point of recognition, but the armor the remains were clad in, along with the hundreds of empty shells surrounding it, signified it was definitely a human. Chief reached down and grabbed the dog tags hidden among the guts, and learned that the body was that of Staff Sergeant Marvin Mabuto. Guilty Spark then chimed in, revealing that this wasn't the first time he'd taken a reclaimer through the library. When the Covenant first released the Flood from containment, Spark needed a reclaimer to get the index so he could stop them, and he needed one fast. He looked all over the ring before finding a single Marine on the other side of it, split from his squad, wandering aimlessly round a foreigner structure. He then teleported this extremely unlucky soldier to the exact same starting location as Chief, with the exact same goal, retrieving the index, of course.
Oh my
knowing
god.
what it does. Just a word of advice real quick, if you ever get randomly teleported by a floating cocky eyeball, never actually retrieve what it's telling you to retrieve, just trust me, it doesn't tend to end well. However, sadly,
I know.
Marvin had clearly failed his task. As noted
Poor
by Philipp,
Marvin!
His combat skin proved even less suitable than Chief's at stopping the flood, which isn't exactly a shock given how many open areas the combat evolved marine armor has.
Yeah,
It's not
like he's
too
on a
bad when
major
bullets are flying at you,
disadvantage
but when an infection
compared
ball
to
is trying to latch onto your
Chief.
neck, yeah, it's really not that great. That said, though, how
Jesus.
far Naruto had made it through the hellhole of a facility,
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
actually genuinely shocked Chief. Even with his Spartan augmentations and armor replacements,
Yeah.
he was near the end of his endurance. He was getting really tired, and Staff Sergeant Mabuto had managed to get this far with neither of those perks. Before leaving to retrieve the index, Chief left what remained of Marlon's
Oh my god,
force
I will
to
not
the
miss that
index.
mission.
I didn't know you, Sarge.
I will not.
Sure as hell wish I had. You must have been one hardcore son of a bitch. Mabuto might have gone down terrified.
Wow.
In one of the vilest ways possible, but having Master Chief call you a hardcore son of a bitch is one hell of a bittersweet end to your life. Rest in peace, Sarge. You sure as hell made it further than most people did.
Jesus, F in the
And
chat
that
for
is
Marvin.
Sad, but still very interesting.
Seriously, great video. F in the chat for Marvin, lads. I mean, what a dude. Like, seriously, he wasn't all modded up like freaking Chief, and he got as far as he did. That's insane, man. What a G. Even though he was pretty much tricked in destroying everything, just like how Master Chief was, and hadn't a fucking clue what was going on. He was just kind of going with it. But, you know, honestly, like, what a dude. What a dude. That's kind of crazy, you know. I love all this hidden stuff. I guess this is why he's called Hidden Xperia. He finds all the hidden stuff that, you know, the casual fan, like myself, wouldn't really know. Now, I do plan on getting the books, and I do plan on reading the books, because, honestly, I think I've fallen in love with the lore of Halo. Like, honestly, I really have. And I honestly want to see more. So, and read more and know more. So I'm going to be getting the books for sure. Right, so the next video we're going to be checking out is Captain Keyes and his terrifying flood infection. Now, lads, we all know what Captain Keyes had to go through. Like, I genuinely feel sorry for this man. You know, seriously, what he went through and having to fight off the flood infection in his mind, and they're trying to, like, eradicate his memories and stuff, like, and he was a true fighter, like, more than any other human that the flood has encountered, and you know that, like, mentally, he was a powerful, powerful dude. So, what he went through is terrifying, and now we're going to go into in-depth lore about it. Hidden Xperia, I fucking love your logo, bro. It's sick. Right.
Hey guys, welcome back. Continuing the pagan ritual festival theme, today we're covering another piece of incredibly spooky, spine-tingling flood lore. Last time we took a look at what happens when groups of individuals get a little bit too obsessed with the flood, but today we're taking a look at sort of the opposite of that. Kind of. Well, not really.
Look at that.
Sorta. Today,
That's the anniversary edition,
gory,
isn't it?
Disturbing details.
I might
behind
replay the game again in
infection,
anniversary,
torture, and
just for the crack.
assimilation of Captain Jacob Keyes. The torture and mutilation Keyes endured at the hand of the Flood was arguably the worst the Parasite had ever inflicted in their 100,000-year history.
Yeah,
We're
man.
talking physical mutilation, psychological mutilation, emotional mutilation, and much, much more. And in a very fitting fashion, if my voice sounds kind of off in this video, it's because I'm ill. Flu or something like that. I think after the last video, the flood finally got to me, so if I suddenly like just
look at
posting
that.
videos or posting on Twitter
That
or anything,
is so
then
cool.
it's probably because I'm part of a grave mind. Yeah, you might want to watch out for that. But anyways, let's begin the tingling of the spine.
This is gonna be spooky, lads.
This terrifying tale begins on the 20th of September, 2552. Following his rescue from the Truth and Reconciliation, Captain Keyes made his way back to the UNSC's forward operating base on Alpha Halo, aptly named Alpha Base. Sometime before, an elite by the name of Qualamy was captured and taken back to the base for interrogation. Now, for reasons unclear, this elite had become apparently disillusioned with the Covenant and was very willing to dish out tactical secrets to the UNSC.
Arcade game, isn't it?
The location of a major weapons cache hidden deep within one of the Halo swamps, and immediately a robust fire team was formed to investigate. Sergeant Major Avery Johnson joined Fire Team Charlie, who took part in the raid on the Truth and Reconciliation, as well as Second Squad, and the group were led by none other than the recently rescued Captain Keyes.
Yeah.
Ballsy move from the captain, but, you know, I respect it. Wasting little time, the Coalition boarded a Pelican and headed to the coordinates provided by the elite. The reason they'd assembled such a large strike team was because they very clearly expected heavy Covenant resistance. But when they arrived at the swamp facility, they found the opposite. It was quiet. Too quiet.
Yeah, just like when you first enter.
Location, there was a distinct lack of any Covenant. At least until they moved further into the station.
Yeah, it was
where they
creepy.
stumbled across the remains of those who were once stationed here. Their bodies mutilated and defiled beyond human comprehension. This clearly wasn't the work of any human soldiers, and it was unlikely that any members of the Covenant were capable of this either, save for maybe the Brutes, but as far as Keyes and the crew were aware, the Brutes were not members of the fleet that followed the Autumn to the Ring. But as puzzled and oddly disturbed as they were, they had a mission to complete, so they pressed forward. Maybe this was just a blessing in disguise. Maybe the weapons cache was left totally unguarded for them to just swoop in and steal without breaking a sweat. If only it was that simple. As we all know, that was far from the case.
Yep.
When the team broke through a suspiciously tightly locked door, they hit a dead end, if you'll pardon the pun. And the horror of the facility was unleashed.
Oh, here we go.
Only a few members of the strike
that
team
music, man.
And unfortunately,
every time I hear that music, I get chills.
Was not one of
it's like
During
PTSD.
the chaos of the outbreak, an infection form had managed to catch him off guard and latch onto his neck, officially beginning the infection process. Now, at this point, the flood outbreak was very much in its first stage, the feral stage, where constructing a proto-grave mine to command local infected is absolutely paramount. To command efficiently, raw knowledge is required, and so whenever a host is infected, the flood dig through their brains to see if there's anything of use, and whether there is or not is a deciding factor in how the host's body is used by the parasite. Initially, Keyes was turned into a simple combat form, but as the infection form dug through his memories, the, at the time, small consciousness of the Flood realized that this host was far too important to become what was essentially cannon fodder. In a vile, sick and twisted way, this lump of biomass was destined for something greater. When Keyes awoke, he had this sudden urge to repeatedly recite his name.
Keyes, Jacob, Captain, service number 01928-19912-JK.
After some
repetitions, it's actually so sad.
He then felt a strange sort of intrusion in his mind. A presence, a third party that was angry at him for remembering his name for some reason. Although he was still none the wiser as to where he was, his distorted memory was slowly managing to reform. He remembered hallways full of enemies. Now, he couldn't remember who or what these enemies were, but he could remember that there were far too many of them for his team to handle, followed by a memory of a sharp, intense stabbing pain. Based on that, he assumed that he'd been captured, and that this strange feeling was a new form of interrogation the Covenant were using. So, he continued reciting his name, rank, and service number, denying the enemy any of the secrets that he knew. Secrets about the UNSC, about humanity, and the location of Earth. However, while he was fixated on these repetitions, an intense buzzing pressure was increasing in intensity, deepening its invasion into his mind, which terrified him, yet still he persisted. But little
what
did
a
he know
strong
his
mind.
was futile. All of a sudden, familiar personal images began playing before him, which he quickly realized was the present sifting through his memories like a grave robber, and he was powerless to stop it.
Oh my
Then
god,
he
the
felt
helplessness
sensation
feeling.
of the first woman that he'd ever kissed, a strangely warm feeling that was ripped away from him in an instant. The feeling was as if his entire essence was being pulled apart right before him, with some pieces being taken for study and others left behind. He tried to hold on to the memories that were being left, but as quickly as he could grab them, they were being stolen from him, and he continued to sink into this bottomless void with nothing to keep him up. Time in this state also seemed to just not exist. There was no measure of it, and even if there was, Keyes would not have had the mental capacity to focus on it. All his energy, what little he had left, was spent holding back this presence, when suddenly he realized something. This presence wanted something. It wasn't scanning through his memories for no reason. There was something specific in there that it was after, and as Keyes continued to resist in his consciousness, it came to him. Escape. Fueled by its primordial urge to feed, it wanted to escape the ring to reach a better feeding ground. Earth. Another sharp tendril stabbed into his mind, retrieving images of Earth's sunrise.
Oh my lord.
By cows being led into a slaughterhouse. But Keyes managed to resist, replaying memories from his childhood to try and block the intrusion, knowing full well that it would be the end of everything if this entity were to find Earth. He had only one soul-crushing thing to do. He took all his fondest memories of Earth, from his childhood, his adulthood, and all stages of his life, and forced them down as deep as he could, masking them with more mundane memories like smells, the taste of food, and the like. As the valiant captain that he was prepared to sacrifice anything and everything to protect the last bastion of humanity. Now that Reach had fallen, Earth was all they had left, and if it meant sacrificing everything he held dear to protect it, then he was damn well ready to do that. As he continued to delete his most precious memories, he felt pieces of him slipping away. The essence of who he was falling into the void beneath him. When suddenly, he heard voices. It was Chief and Cortana. Where most people would have been thrilled to hear
the Chief,
to rescue them,
what a behemoth,
was terrified. If this thing managed to capture those two, then all really would be lost. So, in a scream of anguish, he cried out to tell them to leave and get out now.
Chief, don't be a fool. Leave me.
Captain? Captain? I've lost him.
However, it was actually very lucky that the two had arrived when they did. Keyes really was fighting a losing battle, and his defeat was quickly approaching.
Poor Keyes, man.
The intruders only increased, as if it could smell that it was getting closer to the information that it sought.
Remember Keyes.
As light began to fade, his shattered mind slowly shutting down. He could feel death finally encroaching. But it was as if it had been waiting for so long to take him that it wanted to savor the moment, and slowly, second by second, his life force was absorbed, and Captain Jacob Keyes died at the hand of the Flood. When Chief and Cortana finally reached his position, they were horrified. Little to his knowledge, the captain had been used to form the basis of a proto-gravemind, and if they hadn't arrived and taken his CNI transponder when they did, this centralized intelligence would have learned how to fly the Truth and Reconciliation, taken it to Earth, and consumed what little remained of humanity. Captain Keyes died one of the most valiant heroes in the history of humanity. His death was torturous in almost every manner, more excruciating than almost any other form of death imaginable. And yet, despite this, he was still willing to prolong this excruciating, drawn-out process to save billions of lives. Godspeed,
what a
sir.
fucking G.
You will ever live up to your legacy.
We will remember you, Keyes. Forever. At ease, soldier.
And so, that's what
what a great video.
The Truth and Reconciliation to save him.
Absolutely
Pretty
incredible.
stuff, to put it lightly. If there's anything in sci-fi that does torture the best, then come on, it absolutely has to be the Flood. The connoisseurs of physical, mental, and emotional torture. Happy Halloween! So, that's all for today. I'm gonna go rest my throat now.
Great video.
Hope to God that I don't wake up in the void with a parasite trying to sift through my memories.
Freaking fantastic video.
Of course, hypothetically, capture me. I wonder what memories they'd look for. Oh yeah, definitely my RuneScape cash stack. That's fair enough. Just no grave mind, if you want my RuneScape cash stack, you are gonna have to fight tooth and nail. So let's end the video before we give the Flood any more ideas. I want to give a massive thank you to all of my patrons for the support over there as per usual, and thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Wow. What a freaking dude. Alright, so we're going to be checking out 3 scariest stories about the Flood, and then what it feels like to be infected by the Flood. Right, lads and ladies, we're going to check out 3 scariest stories about the Flood. It starts at story 2 because story 1 has characters that aren't introduced until later. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. That's okay. So we'll jump straight into story 2. Alright, so this is
number 2.
Number 2 of 3.
Storm. Defender of the Storm is one of the few Flood stories in the Halo canon that's like a good old-fashioned, proper zombie survival horror story, and it's why it's one of my favourites. So, the story follows a Forerunner warrior servant called Adequate Observer, who's stationed on board a Forerunner gas mine, pretty much like that one that we went to in Halo 2. The story's set towards the end of the Forerunner Flood War, which was
look at that art.
Wow,
I love it.
Halo universe, considering the Flood had pretty much consumed everything in multiple galaxies. Surrounding the central hub of the mining facility are several weather vanes, and every 3 weeks the guards have to go and patrol the weather vanes to make sure they're safe and secure. And also, every year, a transport ship comes to the mine to exchange guards and workers to go and fight the Flood. After 15 years of passing it off, this was finally going to be the year that Adequate Observer clocked out of the mine and finally joined the exciting fight against the Flood on the front lines. He'd been seeing these weird alien creatures through the windows recently, and despite his AI saying that he wasn't seeing anything, it was starting to creep him out because birds shouldn't exist. In weather as volatile as the weather surrounding the mining hub, there's no way that birds could possibly exist there. However, when the transport ship arrived, so did the Flood. Adequate watched from the monitors in the central hub as the Flood ravaged the outer veins,
the damn
infecting
Flood,
his friends and killing his acquaintances as they spread throughout the facility. After trying and failing to save one of his friends in Vane 2, he got trapped as the door to the hub locked. And then to get back to the central hub, he had to crawl through these tight, dark ventilation shafts, with all of the exits blocked by various combat forms, the sounds of them echoing throughout the shafts. When he made it back to the central hub, he ultimately found out that everyone on board the station was sent to the mine to die fighting the Flood. Their entire purpose was to die and distract the Flood. The reason being, those bird things that Adequate thought he saw through the windows were real, and he did actually see them. They had the ability to survive in extremely harsh weather. If the Flood were able to infect these and use them, they'd be extremely dangerous. So the
could you
mine was
imagine?
created and put there almost as a decoy to draw the Flood away from the center of the planet where the birds lived, and instead towards these fresh Forerunner hosts on board the station. After dealing with the revelation that the mine essentially acted as death row for the Flood, Adequate scuttled the station, sending it plummeting to the center of the planet and killing all the Flood on board, and destroying all of the biomass they'd accumulated.
Yeah, that mission was so sick.
Adequate survived the fall and was stuck in the eye of the storm, with nothing but his AI and the bird creatures to keep him company forevermore.
Wow.
And in the number 1 spot, we have the infection and death of Private Wallace Jenkins. Okay, so this one is, without a doubt, the creepiest and most disturbing Flood story because it goes into the raw details of the infection process.
Oh, alright, here we go.
The infection form
thank you, SWAT Duck.
Is experienced through the eyes of Private Wallace Jenkins, the guy who recorded the initial outbreak on Installation 04 during Halo Combat Evolved.
This is the guy behind the camera!
Everybody apart from Sergeant Johnson get infected.
Holy shit!
Outbreak, everybody in his squad, aside from Johnson of course, was infected, but the infection form that infected Jenkins was quite old from being stored for so long, and it was weak, so it didn't properly infect him. During infection, the infection form normally kills the host and then infects it, but in the case of Jenkins, it didn't kill him. So that means that he became like 90% combat form and remained like 10% Wallace Jenkins. He could still control himself partly.
No
but
way.
most of the time, he had to just sit there and watch as the infection form controlled all but his mind. Under no control of his own,
serious?
Jenkins' body was taken to the surface with a load of other combat forms to attack a group of ODSTs, and whenever he got the chance, Jenkins tried to get himself killed. He'd take over the infection form and try and walk towards the fire, but he failed to do so and was captured and interrogated by the ODSTs. Before this, he'd also tried to throw himself off a cliff to commit suicide because the physical and mental torture was too much. But every time he got to the edge of the cliff, the infection form would regain control and make him walk back. It's quite a disturbing situation. During the interrogation, the infection form kept regaining control, attempting to attack the ODSTs by extending a tentacle out of Jenkins' arm, snapping his bones, bursting his veins, and tearing his skin, creating immense physical pain, well, as you'd imagine. But occasionally, the pain would knock the infection form out, which gave Jenkins a tiny opportunity to gain physical control back, during which he tried to desperately tell the ODSTs about the true horror and potential of the Flood. Jenkins also actually managed to save Earth. He informed the ODSTs, who were going to use the Truth and Reconciliation to get back to Earth, not to use it and not to take it to Earth because it was heavily infested by the Flood, and doing so would cause a massive outbreak and ultimately the fall of Earth, so instead, they destroyed it, wiping out a shitload of Flood on board, and finally laying Private Wallace Jenkins to rest, free of his parasitical torture.
God, F in the chat for Jenkins!
They are 3 of the most disturbing, creepy
Jenkins.
stories about the Flood. If you want to read
Wallace Jenkins was definitely the worst one I've heard so far.
So check them out. They're definitely worth reading. The source material is very good.
I think him and Keys are on par.
If you're going to read the source material, you're going to get even more creeped out than you are when you watch my videos. So be prepared.
That's
give a big
freaking messed up.
Over on Patreon for the massive support.
Shout out Hidden
Hawk,
Xperia, what a dude.
McBride, Chris G, Jack Madden, and Stefan Kursick.
And shout out to all of his massive supporters as well. What a G. Oh my god, that actually creeped me out. Like, I was genuinely creeped out by that. Alright, so next up we have what it feels like to be infected by the Flood. Okay, at least we're going to be going into some grim details and specifics of how it feels to be infected by the Flood. This is going to be messed up. I can feel it already. Alright, here we go.
Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to dive into a few various pieces of Halo lore and look at exactly what it feels like to be infected by the Flood. The pain, the emotions,
oh man, here we go.
All of it.
Here we
so
go.
Sit back and get ready to experience what it truly feels like to become one with the Halo universe's most ominous enemy.
I'm not ready for this. I know I'm not ready for this.
The major aspect of Flood infection that's worth noting is that not only is it a physically torturous process, it's also extremely mentally torturous. Along with having your body twisted and broken to fit the Flood's needs, your memories are also harvested to further the Flood's intelligence. But more on that later. We're going to start off today with the physical pain caused by infection. So right off the bat, if you're infected by an infection form, the combination of its tendrils piercing your neck and spinal cord, and then you simultaneously trying to wrestle it off of you, must be excruciating. But this barely holds a light to the actual process of mutation. If you're unsuccessful at wrestling that little bastard off of you, then you're in for one painful experience. As the Flood supercell begins to be injected into your system, it converts your cells into Flood cells, which causes the rapid decomposition of your flesh, turning you from a healthy being into a walking pile of rotten flesh. As the Flood cells take over your body, they also begin to utilize your limbs for their own need. Now, contrary to popular belief, humans aren't just turned into combat forms. They can also be turned into carrier forms too, depending on the situation. And hell, they can
walking
even
mushrooms.
become hybrids of combat forms and carrier forms if the Flood need that to happen. But again, more on that later.
Whoa,
when
what?
being converted into a
I haven't come
combat
across
form,
that
the
yet.
host goes through an extremely painful transition, where their bones are snapped, skin torn, and arteries burst to create that iconic Flood whip. Much like a certain alien from another sci-fi franchise, the infection form burrows itself into the host's chest, and organs are moved and or broken down to make space for it. The neck is also usually snapped to fit the infection form, which leaves the head dangling down the victim's torso.
That's actually
Along with the
fucking
internal
weird.
organs, all other forms of biomass digested by the flood cells are repurposed, mostly as the mounds of sort of rotten flesh that you can see growing off the combat form, but also sometimes for things like the flood whip, which are maybe longer than the limb that they replaced. For victims to be instead turned into carrier forms, their bodies have to be too frail, weak, or damaged to become a combat form, and a disturbing transformation occurs that we don't know too much about, but from what we can see, comparing the size and shape of a human body to a carrier form, you can imagine that maybe the torso or the upper body expands out, and all the internal organs get repurposed to make space for the incubation of infection forms. It's just a really disturbing process that I'm actually kind of happy we don't know the details of.
Yeah.
For that sort of hybrid combat
disgusting.
carrier form that I touched on earlier, a sac that incubates the infection forms grows on the victim's back, and it can explode at will like a regular carrier form, but without killing the combat form, allowing it to continue carrying out behaviours typical of the form, which really does make it an absolute bastard to fight. The worst thing about all of this is that most of it usually happens when the victim is still alive and conscious. In fact, the infection form quite literally keeps the host alive during this excruciating procedure by chemically isolating the host's dying brain, preventing it from contacting the other parts of the body to inform them that the host is dead. This has a specific use that we're going to touch on later. However, this process of infection doesn't always go as planned. Infection forms aren't robots. Sometimes they fail their job due to various factors. In the unfortunate case of Private Wallace Jenkins, the infection form that converted him was incredibly old and partially failed its job in the most agonizing way. Jenkins was fully converted into a combat form, but he never died, and even as a combat form, he retained partial control over his body. Whenever the infection form was injured, he was able to control himself and, to a degree, communicate with other humans.
Jenkins, he
but
got
the rest of the time, all he could do was just sit back and watch as this foreign parasite controlled his body. During the brief periods of control that he got, he tried to kill himself, but whenever he got close to it, the infection form would regain control and keep him in this disturbing state of limbo. This terrifying instance of infection feeds into the second form of torture that a victim undergoes when being infected by the flood, the mental torture. As well as inflicting severe physical pain, the mental state of the host is also attacked. We've already touched on how the parasite subverts the death signals emitted by the brain to the rest of the body to keep the host alive during infection, but it goes far, far deeper than that. During the painful process of mutation, the parasite also sifts through the host's memories, searching for any knowledge that could help buff the flood and help them expand. Information and knowledge are as important to the flood's growth as biomass, and this can sometimes lead to hosts not being used as combat forms or carrier forms, but instead being entirely merged with a proto-gravemind to provide it with raw, expansive knowledge that it needs to expand and ultimately become a fully fledged sentient gravemind. This happened in the terrifying case of Captain Keyes. When searching through the memories of their victims, the Flood are able to identify those with a wealth of knowledge or with a specific type of knowledge that they require, and then give them sort of special treatment when choosing what to do with them. Because of Keyes' unique role within the UNSC and his extensive knowledge of spacecraft and alien tech, he became part of the proto-gravemind, so the Flood could attempt to extract the knowledge required to pilot Covenant ships, with the ultimate goal of commandeering the Truth and Reconciliation to escape the ring and infect the galaxy. They violated Keyes' mind, invading his most private memories and tried to make him forget those of his daughter,
that was
Miranda,
horrible,
and his lover, Halsey, two things he held incredibly dear, offering a dark reminder that he'd never see them again. He did, however, put up an extremely strong fight against the invading parasite.
Yeah, he did.
And for the longest time, managed to withhold information from it in a mental battle, utilizing what remained of his fortitude. He repetitively fed the Flood unimportant information like his name, date of birth, and service number to stop them from finding Earth through his memories, or the knowledge to pilot a Covenant cruiser, all while being distressingly violated, both psychologically and physically. Eventually, however, Keyes ran out of energy and succumbed to the parasite, and was killed by Chief when he retrieved his neural implant. What happened to Keys, both mentally and physically, accurately portrays the terrifying reality of flood infection. It's not just like any old zombie virus, where the victim gets infected, falls sick, and then turns. It can be a shorter, yet far more excruciating process of snapping limbs, tearing skin,
See,
and
this is
bursting
why
arteries.
we
Or
need
it can be a far longer
Halo
process
horror
of
game.
extreme physical and psychological torture, where you're teased with the things that you hold most dear in life, before having them torn away with the most dire of consequences.
So much potential there.
And I think that should just about cover the true
Ah!
extent of both the
Oh,
physical
God.
and mental agony that victims undergo during flood infection. It really is a torturous process that
Oh,
can't
wow.
exactly be shown to.
What a G. Lads, Hidden Xperia is an absolute legend. Absolute legend. Wow. Woo! That was crazy. All that lore, man. You know, I already hate the flood, and the flood already creeped me out as it is, but after seeing all that, I'm way more creeped out. I'm honestly, the next time I come across the flood in my Let's Plays of Halo, I'm probably just gonna run away. It's like, no, don't infect me, you sickos! But seriously, I just love the lore, and I like how that there is so much more to the flood. You don't get a whole lot about the flood in the games. You fight them, they're fodder, etc, etc, etc. But in the books, they go in depth, and they go as grim detail as possible, which is awesome. An absolutely awesome piece of lore here we got today, lads. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Alright, lads, I'm going to end the video there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Another shout out to Hidden Xperia for the amazing lore videos. Go check out his channel, link in the description below. Absolute amazing dude, and I can't wait for more of these. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, hit that subscribe, and all that good stuff. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.